If you're an entrepreneur, especially if your business is just you, hiring a virtual assistant to buy back your time is a game changer. In this video, I'm gonna go over what a virtual assistant is, why and how I use them in my business, and my step-by-step guide to getting the right one on your team. Fair warning, this video is on the longer side. I wanted to make sure to include everything, so make sure to use the chapters below to skip to the individual parts that you need help with. But make sure to stick to the end because I'm gonna share some free templates that you can use during your hiring process so you can hit the ground running. All right, what is a virtual assistant? A virtual assistant, often called a VA, is an independent contractor who provides administrative services for you remotely. This person is generally working for you part-time, although they can work for you full-time, and generally they're working for more than one business at a time aside from yours. This person could do one-time tasks or they can do ongoing tasks for your business. Here are a couple examples of how I use VAs in my rental property business. So I used to place a property for rent, and after I placed it for rent, people would call me, text me, email me, send me Facebook messages, and I get completely bogged down by it all. So what I did is I have a virtual assistant now who takes all my initial phone calls, text messages, emails, any Facebook message, and she will respond to the people interested, answer any questions, and then tell them to put in an application or schedule a showing. I also use VAs to scrub my marketing lists. So if I purchase a marketing list of people I'm going to, let's say, send a bunch of mailers to, and let's say it's missing one or two pieces of information, and it's going to be a very repetitive task for me to log on to, let's say, a county website, put in some information, put it back to an Excel spreadsheet, I will hire a VA to do that for me. But honestly, you can use VAs for anything. I've used them in the past to do market research for me, to create logos. I've used them to do website management. I have friends who have used VAs to make entire business plans. The array of options is almost endless. So why hire a VA? You're buying back your time. In every business, there are two types of activities. There's activities that drive revenue and growth, and there's activities that don't. So by having a VA, you can focus on those tasks that drive revenue and not have to be bogged down by the busy work. Again, especially if you are a solopreneur and you are doing everything in your business, I promise you there's at least one or two things that you can give out to a VA right now. All right, so if you're convinced on the whole buying back your time idea and you want to use a VA, the next question I usually get is what to hire out and when should I do it? As far as when to do it, probably right now. People usually make the mistake of waiting till they're super bogged down before they consider hiring a VA. But unfortunately, hiring a VA is like hiring an employee. It's gonna take a little bit of time and effort to onboard them and train them. So you wanna do that while you have a little bit of breathing room in order to get them off on the right foot. So when it comes to deciding what to hire a VA to do, I highly recommend something called the Post-it note method. This is essentially just like a process mapping thing. So what you do is you find a whiteboard or a wall in your house or office, and you get a bunch of Post-it notes and you really start thinking about everything that you have done in your business in the last 1 to 2 weeks. And you make a Post-it note for each thing and you put it straight up on the wall. For example, if you had to pick up the phone to answer phone calls for clients, that'd be one Post-it note. If you had to go somewhere to like administer a service in your business, that'd be another Post-it note. If you had to bill that person, another Post-it note. So after you have those all lined up on your wall, the next thing you do is you go through them and you try to assign them a $1 per hour value. And if you don't want to get too into the nuts and bolts, you could just do low, medium, and high. So obviously answering the phone, that's a pretty low $1 an hour task, but maybe going out and administering the service in your business could be a high $1 an hour task. So you go through, write that for each Post-it note, then you go through again and write pain in the butt, yes or no next to each Post-it note. So if you just don't enjoy doing the activity, write yes for pain in the butt. And then number 3 is you go through each of those Post-it notes and put an R next to anything that can be done remotely. So anything that can be done without you physically being present, put an R next to it. After you're done with that, I would consider hiring a VA for the tasks that are a low $1 per hour, the tasks that are a pain in the butt, and then obviously the tasks that can be done remotely. So to get started, I would pick 1 or 2 things that you want to offload to the VA, and I would make sure that they're tasks that you already know how to do. So yes, you can definitely hire a VA who's an expert in something that you don't know anything about, but I wouldn't recommend that for your first VA hire. All right, stop. Usually at this point, people get super excited and they want to go out and hire their first VA, but before you post your first job or look for a VA, you have to do something terribly boring, and it's create a standard operating procedure. And this can both be something that you write out, and I also like to do video. So let me show you a couple of examples. So before I mentioned that I have a virtual assistant that helps me when I have a property for rent to answer phone calls, emails. So this is a step-by-step process of everything that happens when I rent out a property. So it references me as a property owner, and it also references the virtual assistant. When I make these long SOPs, I like to highlight everything in green that the virtual assistant will do, so they know what's happening before, what's happening after, and how they fit in. But literally it's broken down step by step. So the property owner has to have the tenant move out, and the property has to be vacant. Then I am the one for now creating the advertising, and then after that it goes through, and you can see in here, this is what she does: takes all initial phone calls, text messages, emails, respond within 24 hours. When this person is responding, they're referencing these other documents. So I'm doing this all before I post the job, because this whole process and all these documents that I'm referencing are going to be in the job posting that I'm going to have out there. Pro tip: I know this looks like a pain in the butt, but taking the time to do this the first time will make it so much easier when you have to hire your next VA. This is another example of one that's a little bit more simple and uses video like I mentioned before. So this has a video of exactly what I want them to do, has a link to the website I want them to use, and then has some tips of things to look for. So in this video, if you click and open this, it literally is just me in front of a computer screen. My face isn't there or anything, and I'm just recording my screen side by side and doing the actual task one time that I want them to do. If you want a recommendation to record your screen, OBS is free. It stands for Open Broadcast Software, and you can use it to record your screen doing whatever task you want the VA to do, and then you can upload that somewhere so they can have access to it. All right, now it's time to post that job. There's two places, generally speaking, I recommend that you post your jobs to. One of them is Fiverr.com, and the other one is Upwork.com. Fiverr.com is generally good for those one-time tasks. If you're hiring somebody to do something one time, design a logo, scrub a list, that type of thing, usually Fiverr.com is my recommendation for that. They have the services canned and the price is already there. It's sort of nice. For the more ongoing tasks, I recommend Upwork.com. Upworks is just set up way better for those ongoing VA tasks. You can pay them, you can do your contracts in there. They have something called a screen diary where it'll take a screenshot of the VA's computer screen periodically so you can check in and make sure they're actually doing the work you're assigning them to do. So before you post, write up some type of job description. It does not have to be super complicated. You need to think of what you want them to do and essentially how often you want them to do it. In the description, I'll share a link to the template that I use, so feel free to download that and use it as you like. Another thing I would recommend having ready is a list of pre-screening questions that you will ask every applicant. It doesn't have to be too complicated. I'd have like 4 or 5 questions. Some common ones are like, how much experience do you have doing X? Are you familiar with Y software? Another good one is, when your internet goes down, what is your backup plan? Things like that. Again, in the description, I'll share a document that will have some common questions that I ask every VA before I hire them. The last tip on the hiring process that one of my mentors told me years ago, which has been gold, is consider, if you have a budget for it, hiring 2 VAs to do the exact same tasks. And you're not gonna hire them forever to do the same task, but just for an initial time period that you set. It could be an hour limit, so for the first 10 hours or for the first 2 weeks, you hire 2 people to do the same task, and ultimately you're really gonna pick one person, but it's a very good way to find where the value is at with your VA. So after you select the perfect VA and you hire them, I have some onboarding tips that have helped me tremendously over the years. The first one is set clear expectations. But, and this is where everybody messes it up, have a way to measure the clear expectations that you're setting. So if you want somebody to log into your Facebook twice a day, make sure you have a way to verify that they're logging into your Facebook twice a day. And you would only probably need to do this initially for the first couple weeks or maybe month or 2, just as they're onboarding, to give them feedback about what they're doing. A couple other ways to get feedback are, you can pretend to be a customer. So for example, if you're having them make calls and you want them to use a certain in script, you can pretend to call them or have a friend call. And if you're using Upworks has the work diaries, which take photographs of their screen so you can look in and see that they're at the places where you want them to be. And if they're doing something like scrubbing a marketing list, instead of Excel, I would recommend using something shareable like Google Sheets. That way you can pop in and check and see how things are going. Honestly, the biggest thing is you just have to have a way to give them feedback. So you have those expectations, you can see what they're doing, and again, you don't have to do this forever. Usually it's a couple weeks, couple months. You check in with them, give them feedback, and once everything is good, you don't have to follow up with them anymore, and usually it's just smooth sailing after that. And onboarding tip number 2, when it comes to feedback, I highly recommend you set an initial hour or time limit, and at that point, you have the VA stop doing the work, and then you can go in and check in with them. For example, if you have somebody going through a spreadsheet, and let's say there's 1,000 names on it, have them stop on 100, and then at 100 you can go in, look at what they did for that 100 and give them feedback. If it's more of an ongoing task that they're doing, maybe have them do it for a couple days, and after 3 days just tell them to stop and then give them feedback after that. Just make sure you set that initial feedback and time limit thing the first day they start. Tip number 3 is make sure you have a sick day backup plan. I promise you, you will have a time where your VA is supposed to be doing something and they are not doing it for whatever reason. Everybody's human. Sometimes people get sick. Sometimes there's internet outages. So you want to have a plan of what you're going to do during that time. And my last onboarding tip is make sure to take it slow. I mentioned this before, but start by giving them 1 or 2 tasks. Make sure to check in frequently, have realistic expectations, and know that you got to put in a little bit of work, but it'll be worth it in the end. All right, if you're convinced that you want to hire a VA, I highly recommend that you check out my video where I go through step by step how I go to Upwork.com and actually post that job. I walk through all my tips there, and it's a step-by-step guide to get started. I'll see you there.